See, all right. Give this a few minutes. See who comes in. Come on in. Say hello. Welcome to another broadcast of Ready for Relationship Live. Come in. Say hello. Come on in. Join the broadcast. Say hello. Hey, Smiley. How you guys doing? We're going to get it started in a few minutes. Like I said, just welcome again to another broadcast, another episode of Ready for Relationship Live. But tonight we're going to be talking about ownership. If you saw the flyer, you saw the title. It's called I Own It. Have some great guests lined up. A brother and a sister that's full of wisdom, full of knowledge, full of experience that I know that you guys are going to love and going to enjoy. So we're just going to give it a few minutes for people to come on into the room. Hey, what's up, Reese? I see my brother just came in. Come in and announce yourself. Say hello. So I can see who's all joining tonight, and we'll get started in a few minutes. Come on in, come on in, come on in. I just ran about 5 feet and I'm out of breath. That might be a sign. Come on in, say hello. Announce yourself, come and enjoy. Thank you for being a part of the broadcast once more. As I said, this is Ready for Relationship Live, where tonight we'll be focusing on ownership, taking ownership, and how ownership can lead to healing, and how the healing could lead to the love that we're looking for and the love that we want in our lives. So please join, and I'll get started soon as I see some more people enter into the room. All right. Who all we have in the room? Say hello, announce yourself. I want to see who's joining us tonight. No, I want to say hi to you. I want to see your faces. I want to see your names. And as I always say, this is a interactive conversation. So I want you to put up your comments so that I can share it. Put up your where you're from. Put up your opinions. If you have any questions, put that up so I can make sure we can share it and address it with the rest of the group. You know, I don't want us to only talk about relationships, but I also want us to build relationships and build a little community here at Ready for Relationships, where you can actually meet people and join with people, and we can help each other. We can learn from each other. And we can learn from each other's experiences. So please, let's interact. Tonight we'll be talking about ownership. I own it. So what do we own, and what is really ownership? So since the beginning of time, I can say that we have had issues with taking ownership as a people. You know, if you go all the way back to biblical days and think of Adam and Eve, when God asked that question, "Where art thou? Adam, where art thou?" What happened after that? Adam played the victim role. Adam didn't take responsibility. Adam blamed Eve, and he blamed the devil for his own actions. And we all know what happened after that. So this issue with taking ownership over the part that we've played in our own pain, our own heartache sometimes has always been a challenge. It's always been a difficult thing to do. Um, as I said, and it's nothing new. So that's what we're talking about tonight. The importance of taking ownership, being able to look in the mirror and say, I did this. This was my responsibility. So what is ownership? Ownership is being introspective. Really taking out the time and looking at the part that we played, the role that we played, sometimes in our own heartaches and our own pain. Ownership is taking accountability. A lot of times we like to blame our wounds and our heartaches and our disappointments on the person that we were with, and not to minimize anyone's hurt, not to minimize anyone's heartache, because I know those feelings are true. People do hurt us. Relationships hurt us. We do get heartaches from others, but taking ownership of the part we played in it is all about being accountable. Taking ownership means that we stop wanting other people to change. We stop trying to change others, and we start to focus on ourselves, in order to find healing, in order to progress. Taking ownership means that sometimes we have to face the truth. People do things that hurt us. People say things that hurt us. People say and do things that, break our hearts. But even in that, there are times where we have to realize that there might be some truth in what that person was saying, even if it hurt us, even if it was disappointing, even if it was something that we didn't want to hear at the time. Taking ownership of the truth that they said is still our responsibility. Taking ownership means that we move from the mindset of me versus the world to me versus me. And what I'm really trying to say is when you look in the mirror and you're no longer fighting against everyone around you, you're no longer fighting against that ex-boyfriend, that ex-girlfriend, that ex-wife, or that ex-husband, but it's me against me. I'm taking total responsibility of the part that I play. I'm taking total responsibility on the damage that I caused, and I'm trying to work on that. I'm trying to build on that. I'm trying to fix that, where we're no longer looking at someone else as the opponent. We're no longer looking at other people as the enemy, but we're looking in the mirror and looking at ourselves, and we're taking ownership of our shortcomings. We take ownerships of our faults. We take ownerships of our bad sides, our negatives, and we try to improve and fix that in order to find healing. Ownership is a major part of finding healing from heartache. As I said, this live is called Ready for Relationship. So I'm always trying to focus on how we can better ourselves to prepare ourselves for the relationship that we want, and also prepare ourselves and improve ourselves for the relationship that we're in. And taking ownership has to be the first step of that healing process, because if we don't own it, we'll never try to fix it, or we'll never see that we played the part in it. So that's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about ownership, and I have two great guests with me tonight. I'm telling you the truth. If I would ever put on a tour of relationships, a tour of self-improvement, I would have these two on my tour with me. I've known them for a couple of years. I know my brother for several years now, and I'm just constantly growing and constantly picking from them because they're constantly putting out wisdom. They're constantly putting out some great material. They're both are some great life coaches. One of my guests, her name is Focus James. She is the CEO of Focus for Love. She is also she's also the author of her book, What is the Focus of Love? She is a CEO of Focus of Love Moguls. She's just certified, and she's been verified in all types of ways. She has helped me develop in my career, you know, as a speaker, as a writer. You know, she has connected me, and she's just one of the most helpful people that I've come across. And I'm sure that you will feel the same after you sit down and hear from her. And the next brother, you know, I mean, words can't really describe how great this brother is. You know, he's just full of wisdom. His perspectives, his input on relationships, on life, on business. Just an all around great guy. He's a CEO. He's a leader. He's a life coach. He's a business owner. He also has his own live stream on IG that I watch on every Wednesday. The relationship script. That's my brother Donovan West. So I'm going to pull him out of the live stream, and I will want you guys to welcome my guests, and let me add them. Welcome to my guest, Focus Donovan. Welcome. Your mics. Make sure your mics is on. Make sure your mic's on.
There you go.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being a part of it. You know, I mean, please, hey, Focus, how you guys are doing? You know, I know. Please introduce yourself. Do a quick introduction to the people that are watching, and then we can go right into the discussion.
Okay, I see Donovan muted himself, so I guess ladies first. Thank you. Hi, everybody. This is Focus from the Focus of Love, and I love love. I love talking about love, cultivating love. We know that half this country experienced cheating. I was one of those people, and that birthed this company, the Focus of Love. Now I get to help people walk them through the process of that cheating. And listen, I'm going to tell you a secret. It ain't the worst thing that can happen in a relationship. If you're curious about that, go to focusjames.com. And because you're right here, you get a 30-minute consultation from me to help you walk through that pain and hurt. It is joy and happiness on the other side of that healing. Thank you for having me, AB.
Thanks for being a part of it.
You're welcome.
Hey, AB, listen, man, first of all, let me just say thank you. It's not just great to be here and share the stage with Focus and yourself on this particular topic, but also it's really personally exciting to see you and your growth over the years. I'm just really encouraged every time I see you with a new project, a new product, and new perspective, man. So I really appreciate you including me this evening. Myself, you know, Donovan West, humble servant. You know, I believe in servant leadership, and I've served in a number of different capacities, you know, in the social service space, but also as it relates to relationships. Been relationship coaching for, I think, the past 11 years in some capacity or another. And as you know, several years ago, created a platform called The Relationship Script, which is just another interactive way to get us to talk more about relationships, period. You know, regardless of what your status is, regardless of, you know, what your history is, but to just get more comfortable with being transparent and vulnerable when it comes to discussing affairs of the heart. And so that's been a really good journey. And I'm extremely excited also to just say that anything that you or Focus needs in the future in terms of, you know, providing additional support, perspectives, capacity, let's do it, because we know that we could work day and night and we still would only hit just a little corner of just how big this situation is. So I'm excited to partner in any way that we can to increase our footprint.
Thank you. I'm going to take you up on that.
Let me quick announcement. Remember to mute your mics when you're not speaking because there's
Okay.
still some feedback coming through.
Okay, sure enough.
All right, so let's get right into the conversation. Tonight we're talking about ownership. The title of the show is "I Own It." We're talking about how to claim, how to take accountability for the parts that we play in the importance of owning something in order to find healing, and how that healing can lead into the love we're looking for, relationship we're looking for, and the life that we're looking for. So my first question to you guys is, why is it so important for us to have a conversation like this tonight?
So the reason why this is so important is because when we think about, the blame game, right? I'm the victim, what I've been going through, I. To a large extent, there you already see part of the reason why we're in that situation. There's just an overemphasis of I, what I've been going through, what happened to me. And so even when we talk about like what happened to me, what that shows is that there's also a lack of control, right? That you were helpless and to some extent probably hopeless when we get into the seeds of the prophecy that now lived itself out to be true, right? But not to go too far ahead on that, but the idea that this happened to you and that you actually had no role is like, your first step already being the wrong step, right? Like that first step, you're going north when you're really supposed to be going south, right? A little deeper into who you are, what happened, and your experience. So I think the reason why this conversation is so important is because it begs you to do some level of introspection, reflection, to actually, admit some things in order to really get to a real place, like in terms of progress. And if we don't, those of us that are professionals, those of us that are also courageous enough to get with our friends and family, not just those that are clients, but to have that real conversation and say, listen, you missed me with that. Like your presentation of you as the victim, let's unpack that, right? That's what we say in a professional setting. But when you with the family member, you can pull them aside and say, look, I don't know if you saw what I saw, if I heard you correctly, but let's kind of provide another perspective on what happened. So that's just my 2 cents on why these types of conversations are so important.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%, Donovan. You said it beautifully. Accountability is everything. You cannot grow unless you have accountability. We watched the Tyson fight last night, and they have coaches. They have sparring partners. There's a whole team around them to become better and to become the best, right? So in this life, you can have the group of people that are just be your yes crowd, but you won't grow, you won't heal, you won't actually get the love you want and have the life you love. And that's the kind of service that all three of us provide. We want to kind of, I'm the kind of in your face. I know I look a little cute, and thank you very much, but I'm going to be a little in your face and allow you to reflect the mirror of your being. Because it's not just the talking, it's not what had happened. Who are you being that if you're the common denominator that you do keep cheating or getting, cheated on, where is that stemming from? Is there an unanswerable question that you keep seeking? Am I good enough? So you keep drawing that same type of person. So I'm here to just reflect that so you can have that aha moment and get that thing that's running the show and bring it right in your face so you and I can deal with it together. So that's the power of conversation. And that's why we're generating it tonight.
I want to add just one little thing. And, that was perfectly set up that, you set the ball. Let me spike it on that last point when you talked about the Tyson fight. What was amazing about that Tyson fight was at the end when they interviewed Roy Jones and Mike Tyson. There, if you saw, Roy Jones was in pain. Okay, he just went 8 rounds with Mike Tyson, who's still very much iron, even at the age of 54. But if you looked at him, he was in serious pain. Body language showed that this guy was like 2 seconds away from crying. And they asked him, hey, would you like to fight Tyson again? And here's what he said. He said, if my family, once I have a conversation with my family, once I hear from the people in Pensacola, what's important about that is that in that moment, maybe his ego would have said right away, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. You just tell me the day and time. But he paused enough to recognize that he had a tribe, right? People that can also be his trusted ears. And hopefully, in these types of conversations, you want to have those types of people in your space to provide you the reality. Say, you know what, you need to put these gloves down, right? I hope my man Nate Robinson has a similar tribe that he can have a conversation with after his fight. But we're not going to go there. I couldn't help myself. But the point is that these conversations are so important because the reality is you do want to have someone in your corner that can talk to you and give you the real in terms of how you're performing and where you're at.
Yeah, yeah, and that's great. And like, I mean, just to stay on that theme of the fight last night, and I don't mind talking about Nate Robinson. Obviously, he did not have a tribe because he wouldn't have gotten the ring. If he had a tribe, they would have told him not to get in the ring. But speaking about Roy Jones and how he admitted that he was in pain, and that's something that we often don't do when it comes to relationships and heartaches and disappointments and things of that nature. We don't admit that we're in a pain, so that stops us from taking the ownership of the pain or taking ownership of the role that we play. And why do you think it's so hard for us as individuals to own the part that we played in our own heartache sometimes?
Well, I'll share the first thing I think is, are we an environment that nurtures the admittance of pain and responsibility? Most of us are coerced that no, I'm good. Like Snoop Dogg said when he was laying there, it was like, oh, he good. He don't even know where he's at. He's flat out on the canvas, and Snoop still says he from the hood, he's good. How many of us are in relationships? They like, oh, you can do better. Just get out of that and blow it off, not recognizing that there's so many layers to it that we have to unlayer before someone can actually get free. I see we lost AB for a second. I'm sure he'll pop right back on. I noticed he was frozen. So we got you, AB, until you come back. So just recognizing to have a safe place. And that's where your therapist, a life coach like myself, there you go, AB, you came right back. Will give you, and a therapist like AB, a life coach like myself and Donovan, we create a safe place so you can really check your being, what's running your actual life. So you can be vulnerable and say, that stunk. I hated that relationship, and not act like all was well, even though it wasn't. So having that environment to really address the what so, it matters. And if your your tribe around you is just acting like, yeah, you one more time you can fight Nate. Really though, we got to really look at the tape and like, really, was he sparring? Was he really prepared? So if people are letting people walk down the aisle and dude cheated last night or she ain't ready, where is your tribe? We need to make sure we groom people around us to get in our face and let us know and call us out, not having yes people around us. The other part of what's hard is, and I'll give it right back to you, Donovan. The other part that's really hard is that I have to admit my wrong. I have to admit my immaturity. So really quick, that's exactly what I had to do and started. It took me 10 years to get over the hurt of my husband, who was a pastor. He cheated with our nanny, who was also the armor bearer. So these are church folks. So I was devastated in multiple ways. And I walked around for 10 years as if, like I was in a pit bull in a fight and I lost. And if you were pumping gas next to me, you got that whole story, right? Because I was just bleeding over anyone. But I went to a course that was about 3 days. It was 11 hours each day. And the gentleman said to me, well, you chose that. And I'm like, I chose that? What do you mean? Every day that you stayed in that relationship, you chose that. And it was so confronting, yet it was so healing. Because if I chose to stay, I get to make another decision and choose to leave. You get to choose, people. You get to choose. See, suffering is a choice. And when you have someone that can get in your face, or you get in your face and do some shadow work, or you talk yourself through it, do some affirmations or mantras, you'll feel it come up, the responsibility that you need to take. And when you take responsibility and forgive yourself, it makes it 1,000 times easier to forgive other people, not knowing they what had happened. And you'll be so much more gracious on others to forgive. Donovan, AB?
I totally agree with you 1,001%. When you start talking about what had happened, right? The victim mentality, what happened. So here's the reality in terms of what happens, right? In terms of what happens, there's the things that happen to you, right? That's equivalent to, I would say, a tornado. A tornado happens to you, right? That happened, right? You can't control it. It's outside of your control. If you got the warning about the tornado and you stayed in the house, right? That's what you let happen. Okay. Now, if you actually took the warning and then went to the hills and grabbed your family and all your belongings, that's what you made happen, right? You made some level of safety happen. So there's what you make happen, there's what you let happen, and then there's what happens to you. And we have to be very careful to break these things down because it's important when we take ownership. And back to your question about why it's so hard, because if I admit it, that means there's work to do on me. And let's be honest, the reason why things, they go so viral in terms of inventions and things of the nature is due to one key word: convenience. And there's one major issue with us as people that's also one word. It's called lazy. We don't like to do the work. And so it's just easier for me to point at you and talk about all the things that you did wrong in X, Y, and Z. See, I'm on the other side of that conversation focus. I was in a relationship where I cheated. And when I cheated in that relationship, I had to pause for a second, and we were going through counseling. And I remember after some reflection, being very clear about where I was at. And yes, I came from a place where I was hurt. I was a place where I felt undervalued, all this other stuff. But here's the point that you made that I'm going to reiterate. I'm going to echo this. It's a choice. If I felt that I was not getting certain things in that relationship and things of that nature, I should have been man enough and had the courage enough to step out of that relationship and say, listen, everything we've tried to make this work isn't working. I need to now leave this relationship and then go elsewhere if that's the case, period. There isn't a reason that I need to, right? I should have, or this is what happened. No, what happened was this: I happened to myself, right? I engaged myself in this false logic about why I should do this, right? I went the road most traveled in the area in the convenience aisle, right? And I did what is most convenient in that situation, right? I succumbed to whatever it is, and just because it felt good in that moment, and I did that, and that's it, as opposed to taking the road less traveled. So in a nutshell, having that conversation with yourself and saying, look, where did I go wrong? What did I do? And, and acknowledging that. And so now I have to go through the process. Here's the work I have to do myself. I need to forgive myself, right? I need to be able to say, you know what? Because if I don't forgive myself, what's typically going to happen is I'm going to stay in that doomsday kind of situation. I'm going to just be kicking myself, and you say, you know what? I deserve a life sentence for this behavior. And then that means I'm no good to anyone. I'm going to have this chip on my shoulder. I'm going to just stay in this funky kind of space. And I'm pretty much dead to the world. I'm saying myself as well as anyone I may potentially get in any kind of relationship with. So you have to first learn how to forgive yourself. But that's a very hard task to do. It's not easy at all. And I think just the idea that in that last relationship, you had something to do with it. You contributed to whatever the chaos, the drama, whatever it is, but that you contributed to it. The idea that you had some role to play in that, often it really pales in comparison to what your image of yourself is, right? Whether you want to call it self-esteem or whether you want to call it just, this is the strong person that you've always seen yourself to be. Identifying this weakness, well, I don't have any space on my sketch pad, to add that dent, that blemish to my character. So I think these are some of the things that that may go by very consciously or subconsciously that prohibit us from even going down that path.
Yeah. Yeah. I often say, like, if we stay in that victim's mentality and giving somebody else the total responsibility for our hurt, that means we're also giving that same person the total responsibility for our healing. And you never want to be in that position where you put all the blame on someone else, because that means you have to go to them in order to heal. And that's what I believe, like, it's so important, why it's so important to take that ownership. And what you said, Donovan, like I can really, relate to that. Because when we do, it's so hard for us to take that ownership, because once we do that, we realize we have to change. And change is not easy. Change is sweaty. Change is hard. Change is bloody sometimes. Change is tiring. And we don't want to go through all that work of changing habits and changing behaviors that we, grown used to doing, because it's become a part of us. So staying in that victim's mentality, let's staying in that victim mentality, let's talk about that a little bit. What are some ways, some concrete ways that people can come out of that victim's mentality?
Well, let's qualify victim mentality. I think that needs a definition. See, victim mentality comes out in many ways. Like, well, now that I have children, I can't. Well, because I had those children, now I can't. That's still a conversation that's running the show of what had happened. There's many people that have succeeded with children, but not, since he cheated on me, it messed up my whole credit score. Right, it made me fall back. So it's normally the language is that somehow something that someone did has stopped me from living. Right, I can't progress. So I really want to qualify that. It normally has some kind of conversation with, that says only if I was born to on this side of the tracks, if I was a different shade of color, right? If I made more money, right? So you want to, most people just think it's this sour puss person, right? There's a negative Nate. It's not always like that. It could be a slight underlining hint that there's something missing that would have made a difference only if I was born to Jay-Z and Beyonce, right? It's just wishful thinking that if something slightly else happened differently, then I would be better off. That's still a victim mentality running the show. So I just want to expose that because that's a subtle way that we hold ourselves back and not really live our life full out, right? Being able to really see how can I live my life to the max when we have something running the show. Like if I would have gotten that other degree or a master's degree, I should have went another year. If I needed only 3 more credits, right? A lot of millionaires in this country haven't even went to college, right? So we just want to confront that thing that we think if we just had that, our life would be better. So then my question would be, how do you get that, right? What is the next step to actually acquire that? Or is it actually needed and you're just hiding behind that so that you really don't have to live, the life to your max? So let's just qualify that for a second, put that in a nice pretty bow so people can hear when we say victim mentality, what is that? AB, can you ask your question again? I want to make sure I stay on track after defining that.
Well, I was asking like, what are some concrete ways, because people that are stuck in that victim's mentality, usually they don't realize it. They don't realize that they're playing the victim. They don't realize that they're stuck. It's because it's become a way of life or a way of thinking. If someone was sitting across from you and you're working with them and you realize that they have this victim mentality, what are some things that they can do to overcome that?
I think, let's work with that definition, right? Because it's a pretty comprehensive definition, only if blah, 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 right? And the other words that we use, right, around what happened, right? You know, what I would do is, first of all, I would ask some questions, right? How are you feeling? Blah, blah, blah. How long have you known that? How long were you in that bad relationship, right? When did you first know or get the inkling that things were going in this other direction? What were some other things that you did to help remedy the situation? What were some things that you did? Your attempts, how were they responded to, and blah, blah, blah. And then after, getting a certain amount of feedback, right? Or not even feedback, but feed forward, actually, as they share and, reflect on the relationship, then I would go back to certain words that they said, right? And so after they told me some stuff and I was writing just a couple notes down, right? I would literally go up to my little piece of paper or my notepad or whatever. And I said, well, there's a couple of things that you said, and I just wanted to, just point them out. And I heard you mention on a number of occasions about, only if, I heard you on a number of occasions talk about all the things that happened. This happened and that happened. And, I heard you talk about, in this voice that, if you allow me to characterize it, it's a helpless, hopeless voice. Right. And, even though you talk about, here's some things that you did, it seems like for this period of time, though, you were still engaged and still kind of whatever. And so do you have any thoughts, as you share with me all of your thoughts about this other person? Do you have any thoughts about you? Right. like, what are your thoughts about you? What are your thoughts about, your role? And, do you, so I would, again, people love to talk, right? People love to talk about certain things, especially when it comes to this. Typically, this is a conversation that they've already had about 4 bajillion times, right? So, but when you start to now go in this other direction, it gets a little quiet. But again, you're just asking questions. I said, okay, I got all this information. I heard everything you shared. And, just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about you. Like, what during this time, what was going on with you? You know, did you wake up every morning with this new sense of, optimism and whatever? At what point did you feel defeated? At what point did you start to kind of say, you know what, this is just, this is Groundhog Day, right? I'm just going to keep reliving this day in and day. At what point did you spiritually or mentally back out and give up? And so getting into that kind of conversation a little bit, but starting in a place where open-ended questions, just get them to share and get into that, like, work that muscle of communication, and then slowly steer it around back to them. And so it's kind of like, they're trying on all this clothes and they're asking you, how does it look, right? And then at some point, you just get the mirror in front of them, right? And to say, hey, this is what it actually looks like.
Beautifully said, Donovan. Yeah, open-ended questions is everything. My program, Focus, the name of my program is Create Your Life with Focus. A little pun on my name there. My admins love to do that. And it's about 8 sessions that we have. I personally don't need necessarily 8 sessions to help people get a breakthrough and break through out of the victim mentality. But Donovan said it perfectly. It's an unfolding like a flower, right? You can't beam sun on a flower. It's going to die. You can't overwater it. It's a process that you have to allow it to grow and to develop. So what we do is ask, probing questions so the person can have their own aha moment, because you'll live by it when it's your aha moment versus me just telling you, from what I'm hearing, this is the 3rd generation of bitter women getting married to abusive men. See, I can say that in the first session, but it probably will shock you and you'll never come back. So we have to wait for it. We have to probe it so you can slowly have that revealed to yourself. So one of the questions I would ask is, do you see a pattern in your family? And the power of silence is just such a gift, because most people can't even hear themselves speak, between the children, the job, the spouses, the and depending on what age group you're in, the parents you're caring for. So just in the session, asking that question, just let it sit right there. And they'll begin to look at their aunts and their grandparents, and they'll see all of the generational curses will start unfolding. And see, the power of having a therapist like AB and life coach like Donovan and I is that then we're going to create a space where you can bring it back together and then go and live your life. See, a lot of people don't want to deal with the victimization of what had happened. It's when they feel like they'll never start crying. Or once they see the bruises, they feel like, they just beat up. They're good for nothing. How can I stop this? Me now knowing doesn't cause me to heal. It doesn't. It's just now you know what to deal with. You know what to work on, right? So that's the gift we give you by asking open-ended questions, so you can now see what it is that, see, normally around about the 3rd or 4th session is when my client get the aha moment. And now the next 4, I can work with them, really peel it all back and tease it all out. Let them see that this pattern that they're bucking up against their husband, it's with their boss. It's with the pastor. Every time the pastor has something to say in a meeting, they bucking up against it. So I let them be able to see the pattern in their life and ask them to really take your way of being and look at it everywhere in your life and see that it's been there and who else has had that pattern. And then they will say, my mom, my sister, my cousin, my grandma who raised me. And then that's the power of being able to destroy that generational curse by confronting it strategically. So this is why so many people are hurting, because most people won't go and get the help that they need. But if you're listening, we know you want it. And that's why you stop by here to take a listen. Right, AB? Right, Donovan?
Yeah. So you said something that's so key and so important when you brought up the generational curses. And people get stuck in those cycles. They're not generational, and sometimes it's just an individual curse, an individual cycle, where you find yourself in a relationship with the same type of person over and over again. and they don't realize that they might have been an enabler. They don't realize that they're ones that ignores red flags. And they tend to just keep finding the same type of individual to be in a relationship with, and a lot of times it's because they don't take ownership of what's going on inside of them, so they can fix it and so they can change it. So I want to talk to you guys about like a specific um issue that has come to me, and I would like to get you guys' perspective on it. So it's two young ladies, and they both are dealing with the same issue, but from a different angle. It has to do with relationship. One finds herself always running from relationships, always maturely leaving a relationship at any sign of fear, any sign of discomfort, any sign of slight something that goes against her preference. She finds herself running away from the relationship. And then on the other hand, there's another young lady that finds herself kind of with this love addiction. No matter what's going on, she doesn't leave the relationship. She holds on for dear life because she's afraid to be alone. So they both are dealing with abandonment issues from the past, but it manifests itself in different ways. How would you help someone that deals with issues like abandonment or attachment? Help them to see that that's something that they're dealing with, and how would you help them to overcome that? I mean, I know you can't go through a whole therapy session or a whole life coach session, but there's a lot of people that that join the live, a lot of people that watch the replay, and that's really their issue. And they find themselves with that love addiction, or they find themselves scared to love because of abandonment issues.
Well, I think that, just borrowing from what Focus mentioned in terms of, what's the history, right? What's the whether it's a family history, or you want to do something that's a little bit more recent and say, what's your history? Let's talk about, what the trend is, right? So often when we get into discussing, the last relationship, we don't typically have enough ground, or we haven't covered enough ground when it comes to identifying a trend. So it's important that we may want to dial it back a couple relationships or over a certain period of time and just talk about that. So yes, finding the foundation, such as, let's talk about your parents and, were they together, not together, blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about, sisters and brothers and, some of, their relationship status and things of that nature. Let's talk about some of that. But also let's get into some of the conversations about some of your prior relationships and if there's a trend there. And that's important because you might be able to discuss a certain situation, right? What happened was in this situation, blah, blah, blah. And if it's totally different than another situation, then you really don't have much ground. But when you identify a trend, my friend, when you identify a trend, there's nothing to discuss. We have now left the world of concepts and opinions to empirical data and facts, right? We leave feelings and we get into the fact space in terms of what you identify as a trend. And that's extremely important because when you say the key word about, abandonment and addiction, right, to a certain kind of attachment, well, that's a behavior that should be demonstrated repeatedly, regardless of, where, one or two or three relationships, it should be demonstrated in some capacity. So you want to identify that this actually exists. And the only way that you can do that is through making sure that you have clarity, right, between yourself and the person you're talking to, that this is a trend. Notice it may have come in a different shape. It may have, the period of time that you were in this relationship may have varied, but look at the behavior. Look at what you're describing in terms of what happened to you, and look at also your role in that. And so when someone is able to say, okay, you know what, like you said, you can't do it all in one session, but I do realize maybe after that, I don't know, third, fourth, fifth session or whatever, that as we were able to have some time to unpack it and identify some behaviors that are very similar, very, the thread in terms of your logic and how you engage and how you hold on, or how you may, as you mentioned earlier, prematurely just, blow up the relationship or the potential for a relationship. Why? Where did that come from? Where did that stem from? Please describe to me, right, that situation where you gave it your all and you got burnt, right? Please describe to me how this just keeps happening to you, right? So let's talk about that. And then in the other situation, let's talk about the opposite, when you were in a relationship and this person was so good to you, but again, you had the kids, right? And oh yeah, the bills, right? And oh yeah, that's right, the status and the way of life, and things were just so convenient, and you know, it was such a routine, and what would happen, right? Your credit would fall apart, and the kids would have an unstable home, and blah blah blah. Like, when you get into that mindset and you draw the correlation between their frame of mind and how they grew up, and right, and you start to connect those dots, that's when you actually have facts. It's no more that little fuzzy space, right? And now you've, because they've shared with you over that time frame. And I want to reiterate again, this is a commitment to a certain time frame to get to these types of conclusions. This is not a Dr. Phil segment. We are not going to make much progress in that 1 hour. This is not how it's done. This is not one of those home improvements. We're not going to boom, and right after the commercial, we're going to be all in tears and kumbaya. No, do not roll the credits. Just put a ... to be continued. This is a mini series at the very least, right? But the point that I'm making is that you need to have that kind of dialogue over a certain period of time to say, hey, listen, now that we've been able to unpack this, let's identify where the trends are. These trends now are the facts of your reality. Now let's start to draw the correlation between these facts and other things that we identified in terms of, you know, your perspective of relationships and roles and experiences that help frame how you see all of this to begin with. And then now, are you still willing to break some of these structures, right? And some of these definitions, so that we can create something that's going to be more of a healthy foundation.
That was juicy. I'm totally stealing that, Donovan, about at least it's a sitcom. It can't just be a one show, right? I love what you just said, all of what you just said. Here's what I do. I actually ask my clients to do an exercise, and that is to take 5 things in your life that really kind of haunts you. I mean, like the third grade teacher that said you were stupid, and now you have 5 degrees. You're still trying to prove it wrong, right? Some kind of trauma that happens in your life that you can actually hear the person still say it. You might even can smell a perfume. So I asked them to write those 5 things down, and we actually do an exercise. And I asked them to share what the story is that they're telling themselves about the story. See, the way you get free is to be able to separate what actually happened from what you're telling yourself. And I have plenty of examples. I'm just going to use myself to personalize it. So my husband cheated. That's what actually happened. What I told myself is all men cheat, right? What happened was he cheated with the nanny, and who also was the armor bearer in the church. But what I told myself is women in the church ain't, y'all feel that in, right? But that doesn't make it true. It's a story. I told myself about the story. And so when I was able to separate it, I got that he chose to cheat. All men don't cheat. That was his choice. And I got that she allowed herself to engage with a man that was married, but all women in the church don't engage themselves with a man that's married. So I was able to separate the two, right? And then I also was able to put myself in a scenario. Here's where to own it. The whole reason why this show was, which is at the time, I wasn't a good wife. I'm going to let you hold on to that for a second. See, I just got off the basketball court. My boyfriend at the time was 6'9" before I married him. We just went from playground to playground, playing 2-on-2, 5-on-5. That was the best summer I ever had in my basketball career, guys. I was an athlete. But I got off that court, going into church, looking for love, looking for healing, looking for God to, be my covering. And I believe I was talking to God, but I feel like Satan answered. Because I ended up walking down the aisle a year later. Still didn't get what I came for, but I was a part of the usher board and the choir. And now a first lady 4 years later, right? So being able to separate the story from what actually happened, being able to get your part. See, I got off of that basketball court and got into that marriage because at home, it was some unrest. It was some mental instability. My mom, good mom, really loves me, but she was traumatized from probably 25 things that happened in her childhood. And when you don't heal the hurt, you will just repeat the pain. So she was repeating it in my life. It felt like the sun beaming down, and she was picking me apart because really she wasn't happy with her own life. So anything I did wrong, she sure enough let me know it pretty immediate. So when this gentleman is like, I'm going to buy you a home, you can come live with me, I'm going to marry you, we're going to have children. I was like, that sounds like a good deal, good brother. So I had to be honest with myself that part of me was escaping and absolutely using him. Now I'm gonna let you sit with that, because see, most people don't want to hear the nasty underneath some of our relationships. So I knew we weren't compatible. I was ambitious. My goal was to own several daycares. He didn't even want me to go to college. He forbid me not to go to college in Virginia. I was going to win a scholarship in volleyball, but he forbid me to go, or he will not marry me. So I ended up not going to college, but my math teacher found out and got me a 2-year scholarship and ended up going to college as a result of that. So I'm saying I'm being vulnerable. I want you to hear that it's not always lovely. It's not always you just the victim. There's some undercurrent of why you participate. See, I thought I was running from the unstable stability and the person trying to control me, but I got in that marriage, and I'm going to end it with this. And about 3 months into the marriage, he walks into the house, he snatches the remote control out of my hand, and he says, "You will not watch Oprah in my house. She is the devil. She's the snake and giving you ideas." He took the remote out of my hand, put it on top of the TV, and walked up the steps. See, when you don't heal the hurt, you're just going to repeat the pain. It's your being that's calling out trauma, and trauma attracts trauma. And if you don't heal it, you'll move to a different state. You'll dye your hair. You'll lose 50 pounds. Trauma will still call out and pick the same person, the same mess, and create it again. So you have to heal the hurt, or you'll just repeat the pain. AB?
Yeah. Now, I appreciate that moment of vulnerability, because this is actually the time when I kind of dig a little deeper and get a little vulnerable with my guests, so we can know a little bit about, what was your experience with taking ownership. Now, Donovan, earlier you spoke about a situation where you had to sit down and take ownership of things you did. What did that process look like for you? And what exactly did you have to own when you sat down and looked at yourself?
When I looked at myself in the mirror, the first thing I did is I said, okay, you know what? It's time to peel the layers back. I've done this so many times with other clients, right? Friends and family members in the past, in terms of, just going a little bit deeper with them. And, and I said, you know what? I need to ask myself why, like a 3-year-old child, right? I need to just go ahead and okay, so why did you cheat? Oh, well, because I wasn't happy. Why weren't you happy? Well, because I felt, well, what were you really feeling? I was feeling this way. Well, why were you feeling that way? Right. So after I kept on with the press conference, right? I acted as if there was a bunch of hostile reporters in the crowd that were asking me some serious questions, and I had to answer them. And so when I realized what that was, I was writing the answers down. And so when it came time to actually, communicate where I was coming from, I remember, the therapist looking like, wow, like I have nothing to add. Like I've never seen someone actually communicate with like great clarity and take accountability for what it is, like what it actually is, as opposed to, okay, you just threw a bunch of pieces of puzzle on the floor. Let's try to make a picture out of this. No, I already did that. I already took the pieces and made a puzzle and then communicated the puzzle. Like, here's where I am. And in terms of, again, borrowing that term of transparency, like, let me be real vulnerable to you. I felt that at the end of the day, when the relationship was falling apart and I didn't feel valued, right? I felt insecure, right? I was feeling insecure. I didn't feel like I had the value that I once had, or at least I thought I had. And so, yeah, I felt to some extent, I was being deceived, and this was what I thought it wasn't all that. Yeah. But no, let's get to the real bottom. As a man, I felt like I didn't have the kind of value that I thought I had. And so I felt like I was being disrespected to some extent, didn't have, that I was a fraud to some extent, right? I had to be a fraud because clearly if I presented a certain kind of way and I wasn't that way, then there was something wrong, right? So the way I was being treated, I felt like, well, I earned it to some extent. So I created this real toxic circle and cycle of rationale for, you know what? I might as well just do this or do that. So I started making decisions based off of my new devalued self, which was crazy, right? It's like, well, you know what? No, you're still a king. But instead of recognizing that I'm still a king and I just need to go into this other space where I'll be recognized as a king, right? I devalued myself to a pauper and did what paupers did. That wasn't good. So in order for me right? I had to take off that whatever I was wearing and say, no, hold on, let me put my crown back on. And yeah, this king made a mistake, and let me tell you where it came from so that I can fix that, and it would no longer be that dent that kept me in that kind of space. I'm gonna go ahead and expose it, right? And now that I've done that, I've also done another thing. I've identified a blind spot, because so long as that blind spot exists, that means I'm going to do it again. And so now that it doesn't exist, right? Whatever I do, it'll either be out of pure just wanting to be ignorant, right? But it would never be because I didn't quickly or clearly assess where I'm at. So I'm totally eyes wide open in terms of walking in that direction, as opposed to, responding to ego, responding to a bunch of other things that are just, again, these are just facades that exist in order to kind of protect your self-esteem, but in a very toxic way, right? It's kind of like you eating ice cream so you can feel better that night. The reality is what you've done is actually more harmful, because it didn't go away what actually caused the urge to begin with.
Man, that's some great stuff, man. You guys are hearing a man that know himself, a man that really did the work, like we said earlier. And what I heard from both of you, from both of your stories, is that it's a story of growth. When you take ownership, it's all about growing. And like I said before, that growth is painful. That growth can hurt. That growth can be embarrassing sometimes, but it's needed if we want to move up to another level. So what would you leave with the people that's watching, or the people that's going to watch the replay, as far as the importance of taking ownership, and how taking ownership helps you grow, and how it helps breed strength in you so that you are ready for that next relationship, you are ready for that next love, or you just ready for that next level of life?
Awesome. I cannot speed bump over what Donovan just gave us. He just gave us a huge gift. Book, seminar, workshop, Donovan, please, 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 please. And this is exactly what I mean. Now, ladies, wait for it for a second. Don't throw anything at your computer yet. This is what I mean when I say cheating isn't the worst thing that can happen in your relationship. He merely said, if you want to just pack it down, I felt devalued, and this was one of the ways that I could put some value back into me. And this is how a lot of men respond when it comes to cheating, right? It's not that they're trying to destroy her, or, they're not trying to just make you embarrassed in front of your mom and, run you through. Now, I don't know about John Gray. I don't know how many more times we can have him honoring her in public. And, that's a whole nother story. But he didn't come out vicious. It was like I was in pain, and I started acting like a pauper. And I began to do what the masses does, which is to find comfort in another woman's arms, right? So it's a different kind of cheating when it's coming from that angle than he just going to be who he going to be. That he's just going to sow his royal oats, right? And just be, reckless with it. And I got to be honest with you, Donovan, you just described exactly what my ex-husband went through. This is also what allowed me to forgive him. When I did some major self-reflecting, recognizing, ladies, I pushed him out the house. Now, he could have absolutely went and played basketball. He could have volunteered more at the job or saw his mama, but he chose to cheat. That's between him and God. I can't be held accountable for that. But what I can be held accountable, what was my part? Was I nurturing? Did I create a safe place for him to come lay his head? Did I make him feel like a king? Now, if I did my part, I did my part. But I got to be honest with you, I didn't. And that's because I didn't know how. I didn't heal the hurt. So I just repeated the pain. I was married from 18 to 23. So you can imagine, the skill set, at that young age, right? So I wasn't walking in my femininity. So ladies, you need to listen and play this back a couple of times what Donovan just said. So you want to address, am I creating a space where my husband, he wants to come home from work, or is he looking for more overtime or go playing ball with the boys? How do I have life, or do I have death in my tongue? What am I speaking into his life? Because it matters. Yes, it matters. You can say something to your man and it'll ring in his ears for years. He'll never forget it, right? So we want to be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath, because it matters what you speak into your man's life, because he's the most vulnerable with you than any other person in the world. And he definitely doesn't want to be in competition with his feminine power when he goes home. So I just wanted to, I had to drop that real quick, Donovan and AB, and admonish you, Donovan. Thank you so much for being so open to saying that. And I really would appreciate, listen, I will plug your event. You have an event for men to learn that, and I will plug that event for you and women. You know, we can have a side where there's women sitting over here, men sitting over here, and just listen to that. And you said it so perfect. Cheating is not just to devastate people. Most of the time, somebody's hurting inside and they just trying to fill up that plug. They like, I gotta be worth something to somebody. So when he walks by and she winks her eye or kind of looks at him a certain way, he feels puffed up, like, oh, here we go. Okay, I still got it. And that's how it happens. I'm not excusing it. We got to understand it so we can deal with it and so we can stop it before it actually go too far. Okay, so I just wanted to speed up on that. Donovan, answer that question and then swing to me, AB. I had to stop.
So the question was again, I was all happy, all listening, like, what's going on? That's beautiful. Thank you.
I almost forgot the question. I got caught up in what she was saying too.
Me too. I was like, man.
What would you leave with the people as far as the importance of ownership and what kind of strength does ownership breed in individuals when you decide to take ownership over the role that you played in whatever the situation might be?
Well, you know, the first thing that I would say is that to look yourself in the mirror and say, you're human. It's okay. Like really to just say, you know what? It's all right. You know, literally your chest may fill up and you may feel this emotion. Your head may get warm. You know, you may have that sour feeling in your stomach. Just let it out, let it out and understand that you are human. It's okay. The things that you're saying right now that happened to you, or, to some extent, you're going to say, how was I so foolish? How did I not see that? All these things that you do to kick yourself, give yourself a minute. Just pause from that, get up, dust yourself off, look yourself in the mirror and say, it's okay. You're human. Turn this into a lesson. It's only a loss if you refuse to learn. It's only a loss. So just focus on the fact that you're human, first of all. Second of all, now we get into the being courageous, about really now speaking specifically to the things that we should have learned, meaning a trend when it comes to our behavior, our perspective, these self-fulfilling negative and toxic philosophies that we have and prophecies that we project. We got to get away from that and understand at the end of the day, the reason why you're not happy is because that's what you choose, right? And you choose to water that cactus as opposed to watering that rose. That's what you choose. So that's okay. But now that you understand, the reason why it's okay is because you now restoring power to who actually is holding that cup of water, right? So now you got to know that you actually have the ability to choose now to water something else, something that's actually going to bloom in your life. So again, going back to realizing that you're human. Second, having the courageous conversation, as my colleague, Dr. R.G. Allen Wilson would often say, you have to make sure that you are in that space now to say, okay, now that I've identified what's going on, what steps do I need to take in terms of forming your village? If it's a person that you trust to have this dialogue with, or if it's a professional, right? I think at some point you should engage a professional. How soon you do it, for some people, they need baby steps, and it's okay. Just having the dialogue with someone first of all, and then graduating to a professional, I think that's perfectly fine as long as you get there. Why? Because we know all the time that, and you've heard it 1,000 times. We've also said it 1,000 times. For all the other things in our life, we get checkups. We need to be able to do that as well. And I'm not talking about checkups in terms of in response to something, but a proactive approach checkup. But it may take some time. In the meantime, form your village. Who's that person or persons in your circle that can provide you some non-biased, non-toxic, just straight up as is, no frills, black and white, just feedback, when you're able to have that conversation and just get the rhythm of having that dialogue, as well as working these communication muscles so that you're in that space where you can talk. And the reason why this is so important is because often when we have this dialogue, it's so edited, it's so watered down. And so what we're going to get out of it is marginal at best. But those are the steps from my perspective, is to be able to do that. And then, of course, there's some other components. You got to pray. right? You got to make sure that you're praying throughout the whole process. You got to make sure that you're also, when you're praying, you say, well, what am I praying for? You're praying for healing. You're praying for discernment. You're praying for discipline. You're praying for courage. And then the joy and all those things, they will come. But you put those things at the highest, I think you'll be in a good place to begin and complete. I'm going to say that word again, complete the journey. Don't do it a couple days. This isn't New Year's Day and it's January and you in the gym. Pause. I'm talking about it's May and you still in the gym, okay? And you still getting it in.
Yeah. And exactly what both of you guys said. That's what this conversation is all about. It's not to be insensitive to anyone's hurt or anyone's pain, because we all go through hurt, we all go through pain and heartache, but it's all about empowerment. We got together to talk about this just to help people realize that you do have the power, you do have the authority to take ownership of what has hurt you in your past or what's even hurting you right now in order to find healing. So it's all about empowering you and encouraging you. And just the fact that you took out the time on your Sunday evening to watch this, it tells us that you're at that space and at that place in life where you're ready to take that control. You're ready to empower yourself and you're ready to heal from your pains or your memories or the traumas that have you in that cycle of negative relationships or the cycle of bad decisions. You're at that place now. As I said in the beginning, like this, most people pay for this advice. Most people pay for the discussion from Donovan and Focus. And I'm so glad I was able to bring it to you guys for free. But they both have their own practices. They don't have their own businesses. And now I want you guys to tell them where they can connect with you. If they want to schedule some sessions, where can they do that? Focus. Tell us what you got.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have my the first life coach that I trained, the Beckwith. She's actually on the line. She's going to drop my link in there for you. I'm going to give away 3 books today because I want to help you move some furniture in your mind, right? I advise you to read about 10 pages a day. I do that for my clients, right? Because it matters what you put in. You can't watch reality TV hoping you're going to have healthy relationships, right? It's not going to work. It's not going to work. You're going to find yourself trying to act like somebody that don't even, mirror your life. So definitely going to drop that there. We're going to allow 3 people to win one of those books. And what my books come with a 30-minute coaching. So I'm going to sit with you face to face. Now you got to be ready. I only had one person in my career pay me and wasn't ready. Right. I had to, keep coercing them to have a conversation. And then they fought me the whole time. I gave them their money back. I said, you let me know when you're ready. So you got to be ready. And ready just means that you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, that you know that it's time for a change, that you want a scrumptious, juicy life. You want to be able to wake up and not be in pain. Now, this is not indefinite because this is how God rubs us and get us nice and shiny. He calls some friction so that you can live your highest being. See, if everything was so easy, you wouldn't be able to grow. You wouldn't be able to tell your story and look your children in the eye and really mean it when you go, it's going to be all right. You will have better days. So you can't have that story unless you don't go through something yourself. So you go to focusjames.com, and you can schedule your appointment. Just put in there, you met me here at the podcast with AB and Donovan, and you'll get a 30-minute coaching period. But then we also have 3 books that we're going to give away, and AD will let us know how we're going to do that as well.
Listen, I want you to focus. Shoot me your link so that I can get your book. And I owe AB, I got to buy your book as well. So I need to get both of their books. I'm the one in the middle that hasn't, I haven't been disciplined enough to finish my book. But when it comes out, I'm sure I'm going to get it out through you guys and you guys will promote it. But great work that you both are doing. And I look forward to continue to support anything that you guys need from me in terms of additional coaching. Anyone that would like to choose me, the guy in the middle, feel free. Reach out to me at Donovan S. West on Facebook. You can message me on Instagram. Same thing at Donovan S. West. I also have an Instagram page specifically for the relationship script, and that's at the relationship script. Okay. And I do something as AB mentioned a little bit earlier. I do something on Wednesdays called Wednesdays with West, where we talk about all things under the sun about relationships. Okay, all things under the sun about relationships from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. We talk about anything. No topic is a taboo topic. We have some really good conversation, and again, just creating a safe space. So you can feel free to, of course, DM me, or you can reach out to me via my email. You can just send it to Donovan S. West at Gmail. All right, shoot me an email, and we can do a one-on-one and get this thing unpacked, and then throw out all the junk so that you can when you get on that next flight in your relationship or in your existing relationship, you're traveling a lot lighter.
All right.
Awesome. And
I'm Andy Bracewell, the host of the show. And once again, I thank you guys for being a part. I thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experiences and being vulnerable. And I'm sure it helped someone. I know someone gleaned from what you guys were saying. You can go to my website, readyforrelationship.com. As I always say, this whole broadcast is inspired by my book, Ready for a Relationship, where I speak about ownership and the importance of taking ownership over the parts we played in our pain in order to find the love that we want and be ready for the relationship we want to be in order to find healing. So once again, I thank you, Donovan. Thank you, Focus. I'm sure that we're gonna connect with something else. Like I said earlier, if I decide to put on a world tour about relationships, you guys are gonna be the two headliners. So
let's go, man. Let's go.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So once again, thank you. I have a good night. I appreciate you. Appreciate everybody that watched, everybody that logged on. Watch the replay. You can send your questions. Donovan, Focus, myself will be able to answer it on the replay. All right. Have a good night. God bless.